Okay, first of all, I want to thank Stephanie and Julissa and the International Wildlife Rehabilitation Council for having me on today. Um, if there's, I'm very passionate about the work that I do. So I don't hesitate to reach out to me at any time for any reason. This is really hard for me to get as much information in here as possible. I know I only have you for the hour, so I want to give you as much as I possibly can. I'm Lara Joseph. I own the Animal Behavior Center. We teach people internationally how to work with animals using the science known as applied behavior analysis. And how I got into this was through birds, and particularly this bird. He was going to be euthanized, professionally advised to be euthanized for aggressive issues. I went back to school taking master level classes in applied behavior analysis for no other reason but to for him. And that was well over 20 years ago. And this guy just turned 29 and he is sitting in the other room and he's an amazing ambassador of his species. So applied behavior analysis, in case you guys aren't familiar with what that is the science of behavior of using environmental events to control behavior versus having to force the animal. So what applied behavior analysis does is take force and aversives out of the animal's environment, and then you positively reinforce behaviors you want to see maintain or increase. So when I was taking these master level courses, I started volunteering at Nature's Nursery, a local wildlife rehabilitation center in Ohio. And I started working with all their species of animals. But then I started gearing towards raptors, but definitely did not limit to just working with raptors. Um, I called it the Animal Behavior Center for numerous different reasons because ABC stands for antecedent behavior consequence, and those are the three things you need to know to be able to rearrange the environment to get the animal. We can either force these animals to do this or we can teach them to do the things that we want them to do. And a lot of the things that I'm teaching numerous different species of animals to do is the things that have to be done, like husbandry, grooming, weight training, going into crates for transport. So I teach them to do these things. And I just opened up the floodgates and I work with primates. I work with a lot of alligators. That's one of my favorites. And it's applicable to all species. We all move towards things we like and move away from things we don't like. What I do is identify the things the animals are moving towards. Those are reinforcers, and then I start delivering them for behaviors I need them to do. So they want to start doing it. And it helps reduce or eliminate stress. And if I can just reduce the stress, I will. Um, so picking the appropriate candidate. So I've worked with numerous different species of animals and I still do. This is what I do for full time every day, 7 days a week. So there's different, what I've learned over the years is picking the right candidate for what we need to do. And sometimes we have expectations and we're not going to meet them. Then we need to just reassess and figure out how these animals we can continue to educate. So first, I want to identify their history of reinforcement. How old are they? How fearful are they? How are they how do they do with people in front of them? And like I said, if I have certain expectations, I have started training animals when I'm just like, this may not be the right candidate for what I thought it was going to be, but then we can use this animal can we can educate in a different way. And I'll get into that. But when we find a candidate, that would fit perfectly for training for public or what have you. What I suggest, and I've worked with a lot of different organizations to try to put teams together based on what I've done, is try to start small. Try not to start with all these animals in front of you. Pick a couple of them and start learning and understanding the approach. And then manage that team, get that team together. And I'll share a couple of examples of what I did way back in the early years and what I do now too. I've Because there's so many different people interacting with one particular animal, even if it's two to three people, one person may be feeding, one person may be cleaning. What I try to do is get that team together and get like the food and the water dishes as close to the door as possible to make it as stress-free for the animal as possible. And that is training as well. If that animal can see, hear, smell, or feel you, you're training it whether you realize it or not. The key question is, what are you training it to do? Are you training it to fly into the side of the enclosure, run as far away to get away from you, charge you? Um, so those people that clean those enclosures in between your training are training that animal. So what I did was start making up, I think I'm getting ahead of myself because I think that's on the next slide. But the keepers, what I wanted to say is set the environment up for the keepers to be as minimally as invasive as possible to help keep your training on track and make progress. Because if I'm sitting here training this animal to do all these things I need it to do, and then a volunteer comes in, which they're just there to help. But if they come in and they're not aware of what the animal's doing in the environment and they're trying to rake the enclosure, they can keep that behavior of that animal running or flying away from you very strong, which is called an intermittent schedule of reinforcement, which can keep desired and undesired behaviors very strong. So what I try to do is if they have to get in and do what they have to do, make it as easy as possible for them to get in, get out, while putting our team together. So when I'm looking at the candidate for different areas of education, I'm looking at how old is this animal? How fearful is this animal? Um, what are these animals' abilities, disabilities? What can it do? What is it absolutely cannot do? Just realistic expectations. And then, like I had said before, if I set the criteria too hard and I'm starting to work with this animal and I'm like, there's no way this animal is going to be able to do A, B, or C, I do um, um, reduce my criteria and say, well, maybe this animal can better educate in this sense. And I'm going to get into that. So there's like, I've worked with some animals, which Stephanie and I were just talking about right before the presentation started. I've worked with animals that this animal is too fearful. It's too fearful with one person in close proximity, two people, let alone, 20, 50 observers wanting to learn more about that animal. So what I do is I'll suggest like exhibit only. Can you educate the public about this particular species from a distance and have that particular animal interacting with it, enrichment so the people can see the animal doing something. Um, I'll then look at if this animal is too dangerous or too fearful for contact from a trainer. I will train the animal via off contact, and you're going to see one of those animals coming up where I will train it through the enclosure where I never have to touch that animal. And it might just be cueing that animal to go from one side of the enclosure to the other, pop up on top of a stump to show how the animal moves. Some of these animals that I'm working with, I'm starting off contact. I do not understand this individual animal, and I don't want to have contact because I don't feel safe. So then some of these animals can be on off contact and stay off contact. And some of these animals you can start with off contact, then move to limited contact, then work protective contact, and then go full contact. Or they may fall under some of these categories. So, like I said, a lot of times I will start working through the enclosure to see if I can get the animal to station, which means run, fly, hop to an area and don't move until cued to do otherwise. I've done this with several different species. So, when I find when I'm working with any animal, one of the first things I'm doing, besides I'm observing, I'm watching that animal in its enclosure. How close can I get? Does it get fearful when I'm standing 6 feet in front of it? Do I have to back up to 19 feet? But then what I'm doing is I'm gathering a list of the individual animals' positive reinforcers. And when we're working with injured wildlife, a lot of the times the only reinforcer we have to work with is food.